Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today, we're venturing down the loneliest highways in Texas roads where headlights flicker, radios die, and someone is always standing on the shoulder, even when they shouldn't be. These aren't just stories. They're 20 true encounters reported by drivers, truckers, and locals, each one taking place along a stretch of Texas asphalt where someone always stands and never leaves. From barefoot brides to silent soldiers and children who vanish mid-step, these sightings aren't folklore. They're patterns. But before we get into it, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They watch, but they don't subscribe. And that means they miss out on the creepiest, realest horror content only the bold can handle. Don't be one of them. Smash that subscribe button now, because today's ride doesn't end with the last story. It just comes back around. So, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments, because someone else might be watching from your town, and they may have seen the same figure on the shoulder. Now turn off the lights, settle in, and let's dive. I was headed west out of San Angelo that night, the sky too black for comfort and the road ahead drawn long like a string pulled tight. It was nearly 1 a.m., and I just left a gas station where the clerk wouldn't meet my eyes when I asked for directions. All he said, in that strange West Texas drawl, was, "Don't linger past 312, not if you're driving alone." Then he handed me the receipt without another word. The thing is, I wasn't asking about mile markers. I didn't even know that was a thing until he said it. But once someone plants an idea like that in your head, it's hard to shake it. Every sign, every marker starts to feel like a countdown. By the time I passed marker 308, my knuckles were white on the wheel. The world outside had gone dead quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I turned off the radio after it sputtered, with some static, then a strange whisper, like the shuffle of silk or a woman's sigh, crept in through the speakers. I thought maybe I imagined it, but it didn't feel like something made up. It felt remembered, like a sound you heard once in a dream. At 311, the road narrowed slightly, just past a sharp bend where the grass crept high onto the shoulder. That's when I noticed it, the orange reflector on the next mile marker sign, a dull, almost glowing shade that didn't match the others. My foot eased off the gas. I could feel something in my chest get tighter, like a rubber band stretching. Then, as my headlights swept across the flat stretch beyond the bend, I saw her. She was standing there on the gravel shoulder near mile marker 312, alone, barefoot, still as death. She wore a wedding dress that looked like it had been dragged through dust and storm water long enough to brush the tops of her feet. Her arms hung at her sides, limp and almost too long, and her head tilted slightly, just enough to make you feel like she was listening to something you couldn't hear. Her face was turned away, toward the westbound lanes, hair hanging loose, and black down her back like a sheet of smoke. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop, but I didn't look away either. I couldn't. When I passed her, something strange happened. My headlights flickered, not off, just enough for me to notice, and the car pulled slightly right, as if something heavy had tugged the wheel. I kept driving. I told myself it was a tired mind playing tricks. Maybe the clerk at the gas station. Got in my head, maybe I was just imagining too much. But then I checked the rear view. She wasn't standing where I'd seen her. She was closer, still on the shoulder, still facing west, but no longer by the mile marker. Maybe 40 feet behind. Me now, maybe less. I felt something crawl up my spine. My mouth went dry. And then, just ahead, the road looped back. There was no other way to stay westbound but to follow the U-shaped curve that dipped through a small patch of brush and came back out onto the same stretch. The same exact stretch as I came around. My headlights hit the sign again, 312, and There she was, closer, now standing near the center line, a single bare foot resting right where the yellow line frayed at the edge of the road. Her hands were clenched now, fingers digging into the fabric of her dress. I couldn't see her face, God. I didn't want to, but I knew if I passed her again, I'd see more than I should. I swerved around the shoulder to avoid the line. The engine hissed like something alive, and for a moment, I thought the car was going to die right there. But it didn't. I got past her, and this time I didn't look in the mirror. I drove faster now. Pushed 80. Pushed 90. The highway stretched on forever in that strange West Texas way, like time folded over itself and let you pass the same tree, the same reflector, again and again. But I never saw her a third time. I just kept going, all the way to a little roadside diner that still had its neon coffee sign flickering like a heartbeat. I sat there in the parking lot, engine running, hands shaking. I don't remember the drive after that, just the waitress bringing me a mug and saying, "You went past 312, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She poured the coffee, said softly, "She's always waiting." Bride died on that road 40 years back. Left at the altar, they say. Walked west in her dress till she was hit. Now she waits for someone to take her the rest of the way. I couldn't drink the coffee. To this day, I never drive west from San Angelo after midnight, and if I ever do, I won't pass her twice. Loop 1604 skirts the edges of San Antonio like a rusty belt, holding back the stretch of scrub brush and forgotten roads that once led to oil fields, slaughterhouses, and dead-end towns. People use it to bypass the city traffic, especially truckers, running late or locals heading home from the edge of nowhere. But there's a stretch between Judson Road and Highway 90, about 5 miles of lonely asphalt bordered by tall grass, old pipe fencing, and a barbed wire line of mesquite trees where the stories start. That's where folks say they've seen him. He stands near the shoulder, maybe 20 feet off, always in the same spot just past mile marker 317, oil-stained overalls, steel-toe boots sunk in the dirt, a welding mask hanging from his belt, and in his hands a wrench that looks like it was pried from the underbelly of a machine God forgot. He doesn't wave, doesn't walk, doesn't speak, just watches. If you catch his eye, and it's always just a glance, like a spark plug misfiring in your brain, you might feel your car jolt, the engine hesitate, the air grow still and heavy. Some say he was a mechanic who died out there. Others say he never lived at all. I never believed in ghosts. Not the way they're told, but I knew about things left behind. Grief that hangs like smoke. Guilt you carry like rust on your bones. I'd spent 10 years behind the wheel, hauling scrap metal across Texas, stopping in towns that hadn't seen a new business since the 90s. But it wasn't until last fall, October 3rd, a Thursday, that I saw him for myself. It was just after 11 p.m. I dropped a load in Holots and figured I'd loop around to I-10. My radio was low. The drone of an AM preacher whispering about sin and salvation, and I was thinking about my brother, Aaron. He died on the job 2 years back. Fuel line burst at a garage near Kerrville, lit up the whole place like a matchbook. I hadn't visited the site. Couldn't, but something that night felt like a pull. I was coming up the stretch when I saw him. He stood just inside the fence line, behind a rusted oil drum half buried in clay. I almost missed him. He blended with the dark, the grime of his clothes matching the shadow. But that wrench caught a bit of my headlight, and then his face. Not clear, more like the hint of one. Skin the color of soot, eyes wide, but sunken, like he'd been staring too long at something he couldn't fix. For a second, no more, I met his gaze. My truck jerked. The dash lights blinked. I smelled fuel. The engine died before I could even curse. I coasted to a stop, hazards ticking like a heartbeat. My hand shook on the wheel. Not from fear, I told myself, just the cold. But it wasn't cold. It was dead still. No wind, no insects, no cars passing. Just the long breath of night pressing against the windshield. Popped the hood, stepped out, and the air hit me like it had weight. Not hot, not cold. Just thick. The headlights caught nothing but dust and fence line. He was gone. I checked the engine, but everything looked fine. No leaks, no blown belts. I even smelled the dipstick lean. I climbed back in, tried the ignition. Dead, no clicks, no hum. Just silence. Then I heard it tap, tap, tap. Not on the window. Under the truck. I froze. Leaned down, squinting toward the floorboard like that would help. Another tap. Then a scrape, like metal against gravel. Road debris, I whispered. Probably a can or some wire. But I knew that sound. I'd worked garages in high school. That was a wrench. Dragged? I didn't move. Not for a minute. Not until a car passed in the other lane, its lights cutting through the dark, and for a flicker of time, I saw something in my rearview mirror. A silhouette, hunched, crouched behind the back axle. I locked the doors. The car kept going. I waited. For another. None came. Then another sound. The cab lights flickered. The radio crackled. ... AI in single quotes T no redemption for those who run. Static. Then silence. I turned the key again. Nothing. Then a new sound. Closer. Breathing. Heavy. Slow. Ragged. I turned. The passenger window fogged up just a little, like a sigh had passed through it. And in that fog, a mark. It wasn't a fingerprint. More like a smear. A long, greasy streak, like someone dragged a hand coated in motor oil across the glass. My heart jackhammered. I reached for the glove box where I kept the small flashlight and more recently, a revolver. Then dash knock. Not. A tap. A hard single knock from the bed of the truck. I turned slowly. Too scared to blink. Nothing. I stepped out, pointing the flashlight like a weapon. The beam danced across the side mirror, the tailgate, the dirt. Then I saw it. A boot print. Fresh. In the clay behind my tire. And next to it wrench marks. Deep gouges, as if someone had dragged it in slow, looping circles. I backed up, heart pounding. No sound. No breath. No footsteps. Then I noticed the silence had changed. It wasn't just quiet. It was empty. The kind of still that comes before a storm or after a scream. I climbed back in and slammed the door. Tried the ignition again. It started. Just like that. I didn't question it. I peeled out, gravel kicking under the tires, watching. The mirrors, headlights high and hands locked on the wheel. I didn't stop until I hit the Whataburger off the access road. Parked under the brightest floodlight, engine running, door locked. I didn't eat. Just sat there until the sky lightened enough to make the world feel normal again. The next day, I told a buddy of mine, Tom, who runs a garage in Floresville. Before I could finish, he held up a hand. You saw the wrench man. The what? That's what folks around here call him. He's been out there since before I was born. My daddy saw him once. Same thing. Engine died, truck stalled, air got thick. Some say he was a grease monkey at the old Valero field, crushed under a jack stand. Others say he ain't ever been alive. Just some kind of leftover. Leftover? Yeah, from when the land was soaked with more oil than water and men. Died trying to pull it out. I didn't laugh. I couldn't. I'd seen those eyes. I tried to forget. Took different routes. Stayed off Loop 1604 for months. But last week I had no choice. Job ran late and GPS rerouted me. I told myself it was just a road. Just asphalt and ghosts made of stories. But when I passed mile marker 317, I slowed. He was there. Same place. Same stance. Same wrench, catching just a flicker of light. This time, he didn't look at me. But my check engine light came on the second I passed, and I haven't turned it off since. And my ears, like a wasp's nest, had been jammed into my skull. I could feel my pulse thumping behind my eyes. Then it was gone, just like that. The headlights stabilized. The radio went silent. The dash clock ticked once and jumped forward to 1:47. I was parked on the shoulder, no exit sign in sight. I drove the rest of the way to San Antonio without stopping. Didn't even blink. The gas light came on outside Leon Springs, and I still didn't stop. I rolled into a truck stop on fumes. Hands trembling so bad I dropped my wallet at the counter. The guy behind the register saw my face and said, "You all right, friend? You look like you saw the devil." I didn't answer. Just nodded, bought a coffee, and sat in the parking lot until dawn. Over the next week, I tried to look up exit 492, tried to retrace my steps, but maps didn't match up. One showed exit 491, then 493. Another had 492 listed, but no connecting ramp. Locals in Bernie told me the sign got knocked down last year in a crash and hadn't been replaced. A few even said the area under that overpass was where a tow truck driver was killed back in the 80s, supposedly. Died fixing a flat on a car that didn't have anyone in it when they found it. The weirdest part? I drove that same stretch again 2 weeks later, midday this time, bright sun, clear sky. No shadow, no exit sign. Nothing but grass and highway. But for a split second, as I glanced at my side mirror, I saw something tall and still, and the reflection didn't match the road behind me. They say Route 69 doesn't stay quiet past midnight. That once you hit the stretch between New Boston and the state line, the trees start closing in tighter, the air goes still, and time forgets to tick forward. It's where the pine needles blanket the shoulders so thick they look like rusted carpet, and where even the armadillos don't bother crossing anymore. But the thing folks around here really whisper about, the part that keeps truckers checking the rear view too many times, or locals taking the longer route through. Maud is the bent road sign just past mile marker 311. It leans like it's ashamed of something, half collapsed from some forgotten wreck, crooked and twisted in the iron, like a scream that's never finished. And beside it, always stands the woman in white. I didn't believe the stories at first. They sounded like the usual backwoods folklore good for scaring teenagers or passing the time in a roadside bar. But one Thursday night in late August, the heat hadn't broken, and I was hauling out of Texarkana later than I wanted. Had to get back to Jacksonville before dawn and didn't feel like adding an hour just to avoid a few trees and a myth. I drove the route with the windows cracked to let the swamp air breathe through, the AC clunking like it had arthritis. I was chewing sunflower seeds, the kind that leave your tongue dry and lips raw, trying to keep myself awake. About a mile before the sign, my radio fizzled. Just static. Not even a hum of country gospel or Mexican AM bleeding through. The screen said nitrogen monoxide signal, though I hadn't touched a thing. That's when I remembered the stories. They always start with the radio going dead. I tried to laugh it off, but I reached up and turned the knob anyway, just to hear that useless crackle fill the cab instead of the silence pressing in on my ears. And then I saw it, that goddamn sign, bent sideways like it had tried to get out of the way, but got caught mid-scream. The metal was rusted through near the bolts, barely clinging to the post, hanging like a broken wrist. And standing next to it, clear as the brake lights in my mirror, was the woman. She wore a nightgown that hung too heavy on her, like it had been soaked and dried too many times. White but not clean. Not anymore. Her arms hung straight down like dead branches. Her hair was long and matted to the sides of her face, which I swear was the only thing that didn't move, not even to look at me. But I saw it. Her eyes were open. They didn't blink. They didn't dart. Just stared forward, fixed on the road like she was watching the ghost of herself on repeat. Her mouth was slightly parted, like she'd started to say something decades ago and just never got around to finishing. I drove past her slow, not even meaning to. The truck just slowed like it had hit molasses. I don't know why. I didn't hit the brakes. The headlights swept across her feet, bare and planted in the red dust, and then I was past her. I kept looking in the side mirror, though. I don't know why. Habit maybe. But the woman didn't disappear behind me. No, she didn't fade into the distance. She was still there, standing by the sign, only now it looked like her head had turned just slightly to follow my taillights. That was the first time. I didn't sleep much that night, and for weeks after, I tried convincing myself it was fatigue, a trick of the eye. Maybe someone messing around out there for kicks. But the thing about that woman? Once you see her, you start noticing her elsewhere, in ways that don't make sense. Like I stopped at a diner 2 towns over. Just a little trailer shack with grease-stained booths and burnt coffee. The waitress, an older woman with fingers yellow from nicotine, asked where I was coming from. I told her, and when I mentioned Route 69, her face slackened a little. She didn't say anything for a moment, just wiped at the counter with a rag. That smeared more than it cleaned. You seen her then? She asked, not looking up. I didn't have to ask who she meant. She doesn't blink, I said quietly. The waitress gave a slow nod. Nope, she never does. I asked if anyone knew who she was, if there was a real story behind it all. You know how it goes urban. Legends usually start with some tragic accident, car crash, murder, suicide, maybe even some twisted romance. But the waitress just said this. They say there's no wreck on record where that sign got hit. Just one day, it was bent. Like something big had slammed into it from inside the woods. And the next week, she started showing up. That stuck with me. No wreck, no name, no flowers or roadside cross. Just her. And she's not some ghost trying to be remembered. No, she doesn't even seem to know we're here. Like she's watching something else, something none of us can see. That's the part that started to eat at me over time. What is she looking at? I started taking that road more often. I told myself I was chasing answers. Truth is, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Each time I passed, she was there. Same gown, same posture. But every now and then, it was like something was just off. Once, her hair looked shorter. Another time, her feet were wet, like she'd been walking through a creek. And another time, I swear to God, her mouth was closed and the sign behind her had straightened just a little, as if something was slowly resetting. That was the last night I took the road willingly, because the next morning I got a call from my cousin Danny. He lives near that stretch and had gone out the night before to look for his lost dog. He found a woman walking the shoulder in a soaked white gown, barefoot, staring straight ahead. She didn't speak. Didn't even flinch when his flashlight hit her full in the face. Danny's dog never came back. He said her eyes were like dried glass. I asked him if she blinked dot. He said no dot after that. I stayed away. But Route 69 has a way of pulling you back. A flat tire. A wrong turn. One time my GPS rerouted without warning, and by the time I realized it, I was already nearing the bent sign. My radio fizzled. My headlights flickered. And there she was. Only. This time she moved. Not a walk. Not a lunge. Just one step. A small sudden twitch forward the second my high beams hit her. It was like something in her had jolted awake for the first time in years. I slammed the gas, hard punching through my ribs. The truck fishtailed, gravel spitting, and I didn't Look back. I couldn't, but I saw the sign that it was upright again. Since then, the stories have changed. People say they see her further down the road now. Some even claim she's been spotted walking. Always barefoot, always quiet, but never blinking. And the bent sign? It's not bent anymore. Not broken, not twisted. It stands straight, proud almost, like it never remembered the wreck that was supposed to make it that way. Like it gave up. A piece of itself to let her go. So now, if you find yourself on Route 69 after midnight, don't trust your radio. Don't trust your GPS. And for God's sake, don't slow down near mile marker 311, because she's not just watching anymore. She's searching. And if you see her step toward you, even once, you better pray she doesn't take another. They say if you're driving south past Laredo on I-35 around 2 in the morning, you'll see him. Just a little boy, no more than 6, standing in the center median where the concrete splits the lanes like a scar. He wears a dirty white shirt. That hangs too long for his size and nothing else, no pants, no shoes. His feet are bare, dark from dust or something worse. The light above him, always the same blinking yellow, flickers like it's caught in its own slow panic. He doesn't move, doesn't flinch at the wind whipping across the highway. But if your headlights catch him just right, he raises one hand and waves. Not frantic, not playful. Just a slow, deliberate motion. Like he already knows you. Most drivers think it's a trick of the eyes. Highway hypnosis, they say. Sleep deprivation. Some long-haul drivers take photos of the spot later in the day, expecting to see a roadside memorial, a cross maybe, or wilted plastic flowers pressed into the gravel. But there's nothing, just dust and heat and roadkill long dried up. And when they pull their dashcam footage, the boy's never there. The first time I heard the story, it was from an old trucker named Silas in a roadside diner off Loop 20. He had gray whiskers that looked like steel wool and nicotine stains between every finger. He told it like it was the weather, just something you deal with out here. Saw that boy in '03, he muttered over black coffee. Thought he was real. Pulled over, opened the door, shouted for him. He waved, then walked right into the westbound lanes. A car passed, then a semi. I screamed, man, ran out. But there wasn't nothing. No body, no blood, no sound. He stared into his coffee like something might crawl out of it. Didn't even leave footprints. At the time, I didn't believe him. I was 28, working for a small logistics company running light freight between Dallas and Monterey. Laredo was always a pass-through, a stop for gas or a Red Bull or to use the restroom at a Love's Travel stop. But then one night in early October, I got delayed outside San Antonio and didn't cross the checkpoint until close to 1:40 a.m. The road was mostly empty, save for a few rigs running late, their red lights trailing like embers ahead of me. My eyes felt gummy, my mouth sour from too much coffee and gas station beef jerky. That's when I saw the blinking light. And the boy dot at first, I thought it was a coyote or a dog wandering onto the median. Something small, moving wrong. But then the figure stood up straight. Bare legs, bony arms, that oversized shirt hanging like it had soaked up rain from a storm. That never came. He was standing on the median right at mile marker 17. My headlights hit him square, and he lifted his hand. That wave, slow, measured, familiar, like he knew me. I hit the brakes without thinking. My tires squealed, and the truck behind me honked, swerving into the other lane. I barely noticed. The boy turned. Then, just like the stories, he stepped off the median and into the westbound lane. My heart leapt up into my throat. I expected the sound impact, tires screeching, maybe a thump or a scream. But there was nothing. A car passed, then a Freightliner. My lights caught nothing but the ripple of heat over the pavement. No body, no blood. I threw the truck into park and ran out into the dark, my boots crunching on gravel and broken glass. I called out, voice hoarse and shaking, "Hey, kid, are you okay?" The silence was unbearable. Even the cicadas had gone quiet. The westbound driver had stopped too. A young guy in a red Mustang, pale and shaking. "Did you see him?" he asked, voice cracking. "That kid. He walked right in front of me, man. I thought I hit him. I swear I did. But there was nothing. No dent, no scrape. No sign of life or death." We searched the area with flashlights for over an hour. A sheriff deputy eventually came by and took a statement. He didn't seem surprised. "You boys new to this stretch?" he asked, writing something down in a worn notepad. "That kid's been around a long time. First report was in the 80s. Maybe earlier. Never any evidence, though. No missing persons matching the description. No CCTV footage. Nothing sticks." The deputy gave us both that tired, haunted look. "Best you don't stop next time." I didn't believe in ghosts until that night, but something about the boy, it stayed with me. His face was pale, sure, but not expressionless. It wasn't blank like a mannequin. It was knowing, like he understood what was about to happen and had made peace with it, or worse, like he had done it before. Many times, I couldn't sleep for days after. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him turning away. That wave freezing in my memory like a cursed GIF on repeat. My therapist said it was a trauma response, that I'd witnessed a terrible accident. "Your brain is trying to protect you," she said, "to make sense of something senseless." But there was no accident, no body, no damage. 2 months later, I went back. Not because I wanted to, but because something kept pulling me. I left around midnight, drove straight through until I reached mile marker 17 again. This time, I didn't even blink when I saw the light still, blinking yellow and the small figure beneath it. I stopped again. I got out. I don't know why I did what I did next. Maybe it was the lack of sleep. Maybe I needed to know. I crossed the road slowly, boots scraping along the gravel shoulder. The boy didn't move. He looked up at me, face soft and too round, like a kid who hadn't eaten in days. His eyes didn't have whites. They were gray, clouded like storm. "Glass." He raised his hand. I nodded dot and then he spoke. Just 2 words. Barely more than a whisper, but they hit me like a sledgehammer to the ribs. "Come to." Then he turned and just like the others said, he walked into traffic. But this time, as a semi approached, the lights bent. Not around him, through him. Like his shape had become a ripple in reality itself. Then he was gone, and so was the trucker. Later. When I pulled over and checked the news, I saw the accident report. A trucker had vanished off I-35, right around mile 17. His dashcam went dark at exactly 2:03 a.m. No sign of the driver. His rig was found on the side of the road, engine idling. Lights on. Doors locked from the inside. That was 6 years ago. I stopped driving after that. Got a desk job. Tried to forget. But some nights when I'm lying in bed, I hear the wind push against my window just right, and I see the yellow blinking light behind my eyelids, and I think about that boy, about all the drivers who'll pass him by. Some won't see him. Some will. Some might stop, and maybe, just maybe, he'll wave again, and this time, someone else will follow. Most people driving westbound on I-20 through Sweetwater, Texas, don't look twice at the shoulder near the crumbling guardrail just past mile marker 257. You wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it, which nobody ever is, especially truckers. They're too busy staring down the stretch of highway ahead, half asleep on caffeine and stale gas station peanuts. But there's something there, something off. The kind of thing you catch out of the corner of your eye but pretend you didn't, because it doesn't fit in the world as it should be. And when something doesn't fit, your brain protects you. It smooths over the odd edges like a callus forming over a wound. They say the first report came in sometime around 1989, maybe 90. A trucker from Abilene swore up and down he saw a man in army green standing on the shoulder, saluting his rig as it barreled past in the dark, not waving, not thumbing for a ride, just standing stiff, arm to brow, boots planted beside a rusted stretch of broken guardrail like he was on some eternal watch. That driver didn't think much of it. Gave a return salute habit, maybe, or respect. He didn't make it past the next exit. His rig jackknifed and went over the embankment, even though the road was dry and straight. They found him dead at the bottom of a ravine, body still buckled in and eyes wide like he'd seen something coming at him before he went off the edge dot at first. People chalked it up to fatigue or bad luck, but it happened again. Different driver. Same spot, same ghostly salute. Another accident, no obvious cause, no skid marks, no other vehicles. Just sudden, unexplainable death. That was when the whispers started. Truckers are a superstitious bunch, especially the old-timers. They spend too many nights alone with their thoughts, riding through black stretches of highway, letting their minds twist around strange shadows and half-heard static on the radio. Stories like this spread fast among them. I heard about it the first time from a guy named Wallace. He was in his late 50s, big gut, nicotine-stained fingers, wore a faded Petro hat with a mesh back and a Confederate flag patch he swore wasn't racist, just history. We were parked at a truck stop outside Odessa, killing time and bad coffee, swapping stories to keep the dark off us. Wallace said he'd seen the soldier. Said the guy looked young, too young, like 18 or 19, with a buzz kit and boots shined to a mirror finish, even though he stood in dust and weeds. His uniform was torn at the knees and black with old oil stains, like he'd crawled through wreckage. Wallace told me he didn't salute back, just gripped the wheel and kept driving. Didn't feel right, he said. Didn't feel real. He lit another cigarette and wouldn't meet my eyes after that. Now, I'll tell you something I never said out loud until tonight. I saw him too. It was last March, early spring, when the weather can't decide if it wants to freeze your bones or sweat you dry. I was hauling a partial load of farm equipment from Shreveport out to Midland. Nothing heavy, nothing urgent. I was just west of Sweetwater, maybe 1:30 in the morning. Music low, thermos nearly empty, windshield peppered with bug guts like the stars themselves had come loose and splattered. That's when I noticed him. He was standing still as a post. Beside the broken rail, 1 foot just inches from the drop, like it didn't mean anything to him. His hand went up in that clean, crisp motion, palm down, fingers stiff, saluting me like I was commanding officer of something long forgotten. And for just a second, I felt this pull like I should respond, like it would be wrong not to. A tightness bloomed in my chest, something between guilt and sorrow. He looked so young, so serious, but I didn't raise my hand. I gripped the wheel and stared forward, swallowing the lump in my throat. And then, as I passed him, something hit my rig. Not from outside, from within. A cold slam of force against my chest, like I'd been gut-punched by a freezing wind. My radio popped with static. My headlights dimmed for a breath, and I swear to God, the dash lit up with every warning light I've ever seen. Then it all went dark just for a blink and came back like nothing had happened. I made it to Midland, but I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't stop thinking about that kid in the uniform, his boots planted in gravel, waiting for a salute. That might damn someone. Later, I asked around. Found an old article buried in some dusty Sweetwater archive. It said a transport convoy crashed off an exact stretch of I-20 back in 1968. One of the trucks went up in flames, killing a young soldier who'd hitched a ride home on leave. His name wasn't listed, just unidentified serviceman burned beyond recognition. The guardrail had been damaged in the fire. Never got fixed right. Over the years, more drivers have seen him. The stories don't change. Always standing there, always saluting, only ever seen at night. Always the same uniform, same grease-stained knees, same haunting stare. And always someone dies not long after returning the gesture. Some say he's just looking for someone to notice him. Others say he's stuck in a loop, a ghost caught in his final act of duty. But a few those who've really looked into it, they say it's not him doing the killing. They say something answers the salute. Something older than the war, older than the boy himself. Something buried under that cracked asphalt and twisted metal. A thing that feeds off ritual, recognition, eye contact. Respect. The salute isn't a warning. It's an invitation. And if you're foolish enough to accept it, if you lift your hand and reply like so many have before, whatever is waiting in the dark follows you, rides in your mirrors, waits until you're alone on a back road or a bridge with no lights and takes you. You won't skid. You won't swerve. You won't even scream. You'll just disappear into the next headline. Another late-night accident. Another unexplainable death. And he'll still be there. Next night, same time. Same place. Saluting the next poor soul too polite to ignore a soldier standing guard over a forgotten stretch of highway. So if you find yourself heading west on I-20, and you pass Sweetwater sometime after midnight, keep your eyes on the road and your hand on the wheel, no matter what you see out there, because some salutes shouldn't be returned. I was coming back from Del Rio just before midnight, driving north on Highway 83 with a cup of gas station coffee burning a hole in my gut and a busted SE that made the windshield sweat from the inside. The road was empty, long stretches of asphalt flickering under my headlights, with nothing but dry brush and fence posts stretching out into blackness on either side. I'd done that drive dozens of times before heading up toward Uvalde, trying to beat the sunrise, but something about that night felt off. Not wrong, exactly. Just tilted, like a picture frame hung a few inches to the left. I first saw him around mile marker 649, a man on the shoulder, his figure etched by moonlight and my high beams. He wore old denim jeans and a button-down shirt that looked soaked in dust and something darker along the sleeves. He had a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, well, not so much slung as barely hanging there. It was torn at the bottom, the canvas, shredded like something had clawed at it. The way he stood, shoulders slumped and one hand raised in that lazy thumb-up hitchhiker's pose, gave me the chills. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't seen a single other vehicle for almost 30 miles and suddenly, there he was, like he'd grown out of the pavement. I drove past him without slowing down. No offense to the guy, hitchhiking's dangerous both ways, but I'd had enough of strangers for one lifetime. I caught his eyes for half a second as I passed, the dead center in the beam of my headlights, and I swear to God he didn't blink. Just looked at me like he was waiting for something. Watching. A few miles up the road, I shook it off. Turned up the radio to drown the whispering in my own head. Classic country crackled through the static, and for a while it felt normal again. Long drive, tired eyes, ghostly hitchhiker Texas road trip bingo. Then I saw him again. It was somewhere just past the turnoff to Catarina. Same guy, same shredded bag, same way he stood. Except this time, he was on the other side of the road. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, and gripped the steering wheel like I was trying to wring the truth out of it. There was no way. I hadn't turned around. I hadn't stopped. I'd been driving north the whole time. And yet, there he was closer than before, just ahead, standing dead still in the dirt like a scarecrow waiting for harvest. And again, those eyes. Dark, hollow, but not empty, not blank. They weren't the eyes of a man stranded or desperate. They were patient, expectant. I didn't speed up. I didn't slow down. I just drove past him again. This time my skin crawling like fire ants had spilled down my spine. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Some part of me understood that looking again would invite something in, like opening the wrong door at midnight and calling out a name you were never meant to say. 10 miles later, I finally pulled over at a rundown picnic area, one of those with a single cracked table and a half-dead tree leaning over it. I killed the engine and sat in silence, letting the dark close in around me like a slow wave. Crickets chirped, something rustled in the brush. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Then I remembered something. A story I'd heard years ago in an old diner in Carrizo Springs. A trucker, skin like leather and voice like gravel, had been talking about the stretch between Laredo and Junction. He'd said there were things on the road you didn't pass twice. If you see the same man twice, he'd muttered between sips of black coffee, he's not hitching a ride, he's picking one. I thought it was just folklore. Another West Texas ghost story like the White Lady of San Angelo or the boy who ran into traffic near Laredo and vanished. But sitting there, with my headlights off and the air so still it felt like the night had stopped breathing, I wasn't so sure anymore. I cranked the engine and did what no sane man would do. I turned around. I wasn't planning to go back and pick him up, if that's what you're thinking. I just had to know. Maybe I passed a second guy. Maybe I'd circled back without realizing it. I thought if I saw him again, really saw him, I could find some logic in it. Some crack in the illusion. About 3 miles down, I saw the hitchhiker. For the third time. This time, he wasn't standing still. He was walking slowly down the center line, duffel bag dragging behind him like it was too heavy to carry. His head was tilted forward, but I could still see his face, and it was no longer watching me. It was smiling. Not wide, not cartoonish, just enough to show crooked teeth and something that might have once been human pleasure. The kind of smile that said you've already made your choice. I slammed the brakes, tires squealing, and the car stopped just yards away from him. He didn't flinch. He kept walking, and as he passed the hood of my car, I felt a pressure in the air, like being under too much water or standing next to a generator too big for the room it's in. Every hair on my body stood up. I tried to reverse, to back away, but the car wouldn't respond. The engine was still running, the lights still on, but it wouldn't move. He walked right up to the driver's side window. His eyes were black now. Not metaphorically, not poetically, just black. Like tar had filled them. His mouth open not to speak, but to breathe. And when he exhaled, I saw things. Flickers, shadows. A pale child standing in a burned-down barn. A dog carcass twitching. Under the moonlight, a woman's hand nailed to a wooden post. And then he was gone, not walked away. Not faded, just gone. I was 30 miles up the highway before I realized the car was moving again. I didn't remember driving. I didn't remember passing any signs or intersections. But I was north of Carrizo Springs and my coffee had gone cold. I didn't tell anyone about it for a long time. Not until I heard about a young couple who disappeared on the same stretch of road a month later. The only thing found was their car, abandoned, doors open, keys still in the ignition. A duffel bag lay in the back seat, torn at the bottom. Since then, I've heard others talk about the hitchhiker on Highway 83. Some say he was a soldier who died in the back of a truck that flipped during a rainstorm. Others say he's older than the highway itself, something that was there before the road, before the towns, before Texas had a name. All I know is this: if you ever see a man in denim with a shredded duffel bag on that stretch of road, do not look for him again, and whatever you do, don't pass him twice. There's a stretch of FM 1300 that cuts west out of El Campo toward fields that haven't seen real life in years. Dead tractors sit sunken in tall grass, their rusted limbs poking out like the bones of some great machine left behind by time. Most folks with any sense stick to Highway 59. FM 1300 is a loner's road, a place for silence. The kind of silence that gets heavy if you drive it at night. And if you do, you might notice what I did. Or worse, who I did. I didn't believe the stories, not really. I grew up in Ganado, just a ways south, and heard the legends from old ranch hands and the bored girls who bagged groceries at H-E-B. They'd whisper about a girl pale as bone, barefoot, watching from the tree line just past mile marker 42, supposed to be no older than 10, wearing a white nightgown that didn't get dirty no matter the weather. Her eyes reflected like a cat's even in pitch dark. Some said she was the ghost of a girl who'd wandered off during a family camping trip back in '97. Others claimed she was never human to begin with, just something that knew how to look like a child. It was late August when I drove that road. I was hauling a small trailer back from Victoria, where I'd picked up a busted washer for my uncle. He swears he can fix anything with duct tape and beer. The night air was thick and heavy, the kind of damp heat that sits on your chest like an old dog. I had the windows halfway down because my truck's AC had quit months ago. It was about 12:40 a.m. when I hit the curve just past the cemetery turnoff. No lights out there. No moon either. Just the rhythm of my tires rolling over cracked asphalt and the hum of static from a broken radio dial I never bothered to fix. That's when I noticed a dot movement in the tree line. At first, I thought it was a deer, or maybe a raccoon. Something small and curious, but then I saw her, standing just beyond the ditch, not moving. Her hair hung like a curtain down her shoulders. She was turned toward the road but didn't make a sound. My headlights caught her face for a split second and, I swear her eyes flashed white. Not from my lights, not like that. More like they were glowing on their own. I didn't stop. Of course I didn't, but my hand did drift to the window crank. That's when I heard it dot my name, soft, right up against my ear, Daniel. Not loud. Not a scream. Just ... familiar, like someone who knew me, like someone I'd grown up with. But the voice wasn't coming from the radio, and I hadn't passed a single house for at least 10 miles. I slammed the window shut so fast the crank jammed. My heart was knocking around like a wrench in a clothes dryer, and I almost ran off the road trying to keep my eyes ahead. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled into my uncle's driveway, left the truck running, and sat there until the sun rose and the roosters next door started screaming. I told myself it had been a hallucination. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe it was an owl. That's what folks say when they see things out there. It's just an owl. Owls have reflective eyes. Except owls don't know your name. 2 weeks later, my friend Caleb came back from a duck hunt out near El Campo. He looked worse than I did, face pale, eyes sunken. He asked me if I believed in spirits. I told him I wasn't sure. Then he told me he'd heard something whisper to him out on the road, called him by name. He hadn't told anyone else, just me. Because he knew I'd seen her too. We went back. Out together that night. I don't know why. Maybe it's the dumb curiosity all men seem to carry. Maybe we wanted proof. Or closure. Or maybe we were already marked. We drove the same route, this time with windows rolled tight and flashlights in the cab. We stopped near mile marker 42 and waited. Just the hum of insects and a soft breeze playing with the weeds along the fence. posts, and then I saw her again. This time, she stepped closer. Not all at once. Slow, cautious, almost curious. Like a deer that didn't quite trust what it saw. Her feet didn't make a sound on the gravel. Her hair didn't move, though. The wind rustled everything else. She stopped just short of the shoulder, and I swear I could see her breath fog in the air, though it was still 85 degrees outside. Caleb whispered, "We should go." But we didn't, not yet, because she raised her hand, not fast, not threatening. She just pointed right at Caleb's window, and then we both heard it. His name, Caleb. This time, the voice didn't sound like a child, it was deeper, slower, wet, somehow, like it came from lungs filled with mud. Caleb's door unlocked itself. I know how that sounds. But I heard it, a click. Then the handle started to jiggle. Like someone was testing it from outside, we tore out of there. Gravel sprayed like shotgun pellets behind us. Caleb didn't speak for the rest of the drive. He didn't even blink. I dropped him off in silence. The next morning he didn't show. Up for work, they found his truck parked on the side of that same road. Driver's side door wide open, keys still in the ignition. No sign of a struggle, no footprints, just drag marks in the dirt. Long ones, like something had been pulled off into the trees. They never found him. No calls. No credit card activity. Nobody. Just a voicemail left on my phone at 2:41 a.m. the night he vanished. I didn't answer because I was asleep with the ringer off. I didn't even notice it until the next afternoon. The voicemail was 5 seconds of silence, and then my name, Daniel. Same voice. Same whisper. The sheriff said it could have been a prank. Someone copying his voice. I know better. I moved to Amarillo the next week. Sold the truck. Changed my number. I don't drive at night anymore. Not even for emergencies. I keep my windows up, my doors locked, and I never, ever drive FM 1300 again. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm trying to fall asleep and the wind shifts just right, I hear her voice again. Not through the phone. Not through the air. But from somewhere inside. And she still knows my name. I first heard about the man on FM 1096 from a trucker named Clay who ran deliveries between Wharton and Eagle Lake. It was late, sometime after 2 a.m., and we were both parked outside an all-night gas station off Highway 59, sipping burnt coffee and avoiding the silence. Clay was the kind of guy who'd seen everything dead deer that looked too torn up for a car to be the cause. Shadows in grain silos, strange noises near the Brazos River in flood season. But when he talked about FM 1096, there was something off in his voice. He never looked me in the eye. Just stared into his styrofoam cup like the bottom might swallow him if he blinked. "Don't stop," he said. "Not for gas, not to pee. Not even if you see lights behind you. If you see him, keep driving. And don't check your mirror, just keep your eyes ahead." That was 2 years ago, and I didn't think much of it after. But you know how small towns as stories travel like mildew on damp wood, slow but stubborn. You start hearing the same tale from different mouths, little changes here and there, but the bones stay the same. Always a man. Always standing by. The roadside. Always on FM 1096. The first time I drove that stretch, it was midday. Sun was high, sky so bright it made you squint even with the visor down. Nothing but flat land on either side, barbed wire fences, old wooden posts, long fields of wheat or cattle depending on where you were. FM 1096 is one of those roads that feels longer than it should, like it stretches with your thoughts. The speed limit's posted at 65, but it feels like you're crawling. Wheels dragging across time. I didn't see him that day. No one standing by the fence line, no strange figures. Just open country and heat waves rising from the asphalt. I figured Clay had been talking out of his ass, maybe spinning some tired ghost story to keep himself entertained. Then came the second time. It was early evening. October, sky gray and low, the kind that makes shadows fall too fast. I just finished a job in East Bernard, hauling some old machinery for a farmer who liked to pay cash and ask no questions. I took FM 1096 because the GPS said it was faster and I'd been on the road since dawn. Tired doesn't begin to describe it. You start feeling like your skin is sliding off your bones, like the hum of the tires is chewing through your nerves. I saw him near the intersection with a gravel turnoff. He wasn't doing anything, just standing still. From a distance, he looked like a scarecrow someone forgot to stake. Too straight, too stiff. He was facing the road, about 10 feet back from the edge, standing between two metal posts. His arms hung limp, fingers long enough to notice. No hat, no movement. Just a man in dark clothes, his face turned toward the traffic, or toward me. I slowed down without meaning to. Something in your body responds before your mind catches up, like instinct scraping across your ribs. I didn't stop, I remembered what Clay said, but I couldn't help glancing as I passed. His face was in shadow, like the light just wouldn't touch it. His head tilted ever so slightly as I drove by. I felt it, the weight of his gaze, as if it hooked behind my shoulder. And pulled. I gripped the wheel tighter, kept my foot steady, told myself not to look in the mirror. But of course I did. You always do, don't you? And there he was, not standing on the side I'd just passed. No, he was on the other side now, across the road, behind my truck, same posture, same distance from the shoulder. As if he hadn't moved at all but had always been right behind. Me, I slammed the mirror upward. Felt my heart bang around my ribs like a dropped wrench. I didn't sleep right for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that black shape by the road, his arms like they were strung from rusted wire. The sightings didn't stop. I started asking around, quiet at first. The older guys at the repair shop said they remembered something. About a man who used to walk that stretch. A drifter. Wore the same clothes every day, black jeans, long coat, boots with a heel drag. He never begged, just walked. Back and forth. Until one day he didn't. They found his body in a ditch sometime around 1994. No ID, no wallet, nothing but a faded Polaroid of a young woman, water damaged and cracked at the corners. No one claimed him. County buried him in a pauper's grave. The name on the stone was blank. A deputy who'd been there back then told me, half joking, that folks started seeing someone standing near the place where he died. Said it didn't look like him, but it felt like him, if that makes any sense. One of those things that sets your teeth on edge, not because it looks wrong, but because it feels like something remembering what it was supposed to be. The stories spread. A woman swore she saw him during a hailstorm, hailstones the size of quarters, pelting her windshield, and there he was, bone dry, standing in the field like he didn't know the sky was falling. Another man said he saw him at noon in August, middle of a 102-degree heat wave, his breath fogging up like it was winter. But the worst stories were the ones where people stopped. You get enough stories together, you start to notice patterns. They all say the same thing. He never moves while you watch him, never takes a step, never lifts a hand. But if you stop the car, if you step out, something changes. One guy said the air got heavy, like it was pressing against his ears. Another said the road got longer behind him. He turned to look and the horizon had moved, as if the world didn't want to let him leave. And always when they got back in the car, he was gone from the field. But not gone, because then he was beside the passenger side window, not outside, inside, staring straight ahead, as if the car had always belonged to him. They say those who stopped don't drive anymore. One's in a psych ward in Houston. Another moved to Oregon, swears he can still hear footsteps behind him in grocery store aisles. And one man, an oil worker from El Campo, vanished altogether. Left his rig running, door open, keys in the ignition, right by the gravel shoulder. On FM 1096, only thing left in the cab was a torn photo of a young woman, same as the one in the drifter's pocket. I still drive that road sometimes. Not often, not unless I have to, and I never slow down. Doesn't matter if I see him or not. I keep my eyes forward, my hands at 10 and 2, and I don't look in the mirror. Mirrors are tricky things. They show you more than reflections out. Here, they show you what wants to follow. And if you're ever out that way, Wharton County, maybe coming from Hungerford or heading south through the back roads, you'll know the stretch when you hit it. The fence line gets too straight, the grass too still. The power lines hum a little louder, like they know something you don single quotes T dot, and if you see a man standing by the road single quotes T wave, don't stop dot, and for God's sake, don't look back. They say Route 287 near Vernon runs straight enough to keep a man sane, but long enough to make him forget where he was headed. That stretch flat, sun-scoured, nothing but dust devils and distant grain silos has a rhythm to it, a hum. I used to chalk it up to the tires against the asphalt or maybe the dry wind hissing across the windshield, but now I wonder if it wasn't something else. Something older than the road. Something buried beneath it, watching through the cracks. Driven it for years. I hauled livestock from Amarillo down to Dallas, sometimes as far as Houston. Always stuck to my roots, kept my logs clean, and never once needed more than a cup of coffee and a gas station sandwich to stay alert. But this one night last September, a little after the first cold front rolled through, I noticed something different just before mile marker 246. Crosses. Wooden ones. Dozens of them. I'd never seen them before. No names, no flowers. No signs of weathering. They looked like someone had just hammered them into the dry dirt that same morning. Some were leaning slightly, others perfectly upright, but all faced the road, almost like they were watching the cars pass. It gave me a chill I couldn't quite explain. I slowed down without realizing it, just staring at them as they passed. By my window one after another, like a picket fence between worlds, I thought maybe there'd been a big accident. A bus maybe, or a pileup no one told me about. I even checked the news on my phone when I stopped at a Love's Up Ahead. Nothing. No reports. No alerts. Not even a whisper. I asked the cashier, a quiet girl with raccoon eyes and chipped black polish, if she knew about them. She just looked up once from her register and muttered, "They've always been there." But I knew they hadn't. I would have seen them. I knew every turn, sign, and bump on that route like the creases in my own palm. So I started asking around. Drivers mostly, the regulars you see at truck stops, the ones who'll talk your ear off about axle weight or the best pie in Wichita Falls. Most of them just shrugged. A few got quiet. One old guy, a rail-thin flatbed hauler with nicotine-stained fingers and a long scar down his cheek, leaned in close and said, "You start counting, and you'll see something you don't wanna." I thought he was just screwing with me, trying to get in my head. But that stuck with me, "You'll see something you don't wanna." I didn't want to believe him. Until the night I actually counted them. It was a Sunday run, dead quiet on the highway. No cars behind me, no headlights ahead. Just me, the dark, and that endless line of crosses blinking by in my high beams. I slowed to a crawl and started, counting. 1, 2, 3. Some were bigger, others barely knee-high. 11, 12, 13. At around 30, I noticed something between the crosses. A shape. Could have been a coyote or a trick of the shadow, but it stood too tall. Didn't move. didn't flinch, just stood. 30-5, 36. It was still there. In fact, it seemed closer. I turned off the radio, rolled down the window. Nothing but wind. 40. I swear on my life the shape stepped forward into the beam of my headlights. A man, or what used to be one. He was wearing dark clothes, old-fashioned, like 1930s overalls and a wide-brim hat. His arms hung loose by his side and his head tilted just slightly, enough that I couldn't see his face, only the suggestion of one. His mouth wasn't open, but I knew, somehow, that he was speaking, not out loud, straight into my skull. Like a low hum under my skin. My ears rang, my heart pounded, and my hands went slick on the wheel. I punched the gas and didn't look. Back didn't stop that night. Not until I reached the next way station and parked under the fluorescents just to feel less alone. That hum, though, it followed me. Even the silence buzzed. The image of that man lingered behind my eyes like sunspots. I didn't take 287 for the next few weeks. Took longer routes, even cut across 183 once just to avoid it. But it's hard to keep avoiding a road that cuts straight through your paycheck. Eventually, I went back. Daytime only. The crosses were still there. But this time, I noticed something else, a fresh one. Still raw wood, the dirt freshly disturbed. I got out, walked over. Kneeling beside it was a woman I hadn't seen before, middle-aged, plain dress, her hair tied back. She didn't cry or pray. She just stared at the ground. I said, "Ma'am, you all right?" She didn't look up, just said, "He doesn't." Like when you notice. I asked who she meant. She turned her face to me slowly, and I swear to God her eyes were blank. "Not blind, just empty," she said. "You saw him. That's why you'll be next." I backed away, hard hammering, got in the cab, and took off. I didn't look at the crosses on the way out. Didn't even glance. The weird thing is, since then the road's been different. Not just the crosses, but the whole stretch. Every time I drive it, I feel watched, not just by that shape, by all of them. Each cross holds a watcher, silent, waiting. You never see more than one at a time, but if you check your mirrors just right, if you slow down, pull off the shoulder, or stop to stretch your legs, you'll catch a flicker. A silhouette between two markers. Then, the next time you come through, there's one more cross than before. I stopped counting. Other drivers talk about accidents, they're bad ones. Cars flipped with no cause, brakes failing for no reason. Animals that bolt from the ditch straight into the path. But no bodies are ever found. Just twisted metal and a door left swinging open. Then a new cross and maybe, for a second, a shape in the distance. I tried reporting it once. Called the local sheriff's office. They sent a deputy out. Said there were no permits for the crosses. No maintenance records. No local church claimed responsibility. They even checked with TX, DOT, nothing. One of the troopers admitted in a low voice, "We try not to patrol that stretch more than we have to." Last week, a buddy of mine, Dave Miller, disappeared. Ran freight for a Houston outfit. Solid guy, drove the same route. Told me he'd seen the same man right down to the hat. Laughed about it. Said he'd wave next time. They found his rig jackknifed 2 miles past Vernon. No body, no sign of struggle. No tire marks, no brake fluid. Just the truck, engine cold, hazard still blinking. Next day, there was a new cross. I drove by yesterday. And just beyond that new one, between two crook posts, I saw him again. Closer this time. Closer than he's ever been. It started the way most rural Texas stories do: late-night driving. Too much coffee, and that stretch of lonely blacktop that's never quite as empty as it seems. I was heading west on 380, out past Denton where the lights thin and the fields start to breathe their old, quiet breath. It was the third week in October, and the nights had that kind of dry chill that turns your windshield into a mirror for every passing shadow. I'd taken that road 100 times for my job, hauling tools from site to site for the company. Nothing strange, just oil rigs and torn-up fencing, maybe a few dead skunks here and there. But around mile marker 72, there's this curve real sharp, and just past it, on the right shoulder, there's a mailbox. Or what's left of one. Crushed metal and rust, bent low like something hit it decades ago and nobody bothered to fix it. The weird part isn't the mailbox, though. It's what stands next to it. I first noticed it last summer. Thought it was a scarecrow or a busted road. Sign that caught the moonlight wrong. But then it moved. Just slightly. Like a coat swing in wind, except there wasn't any wind. A tall, narrow figure in a dark hood, face shadowed, not doing anything, just standing there, real still like. It was waiting for a ride that never came. The first time I passed it, I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I told myself it was a drifter, maybe a meth head from one of those beat-up trailers 5 miles down. But even as I drove, something clawed at the base of my spine, an old primal warning. I didn't look back. Not in the mirror. Not at all. The next night, I drove the same route again, curious. And there it was, same spot, same time. I checked the dashboard clock. 1:03 am dead on. I stared longer that time, even rolled down the window just a crack, expecting to hear footsteps or breathing or even someone whispering for a ride. Nothing. But the figure turned its head. Swear it did, slowly, deliberately, like it knew I was. Watching, not in a jump scare way, no sudden movement. Just a long measured rotation until I felt its gaze land on me. That was enough for me to hit the gas, heart banging in my throat like a drum. By the third sighting, I had questions. So I asked around. Local gas stations, night shift waitresses, even the sheriff's office indicator when I stopped to get coffee. Most shrugged. Some said nothing. But one old guy, pumping gas into a Ford that had more rust than paint, looked up at me over his sunglasses and said, "It's been there since before the mailbox got crushed." I laughed. How's that possible? He didn't smile. That box got hit back in '92. Logging truck jackknifed. Mailman got killed. Body never found, they say. Just blood, a shattered box, and a satchel full of undelivered letters. I asked if that was all legend, just a ghost story to keep kids off the road at night. He shook his head. You'll know it's real when it moves. I asked what he meant, but he got back in his truck and drove off. Weeks passed. I avoided 380 when I could. Took longer routes. But work sent me back that way again. Deadlines, deliveries. I tried to plan around the time, but a flat tire outside McKinney delayed me. I ended up on that same stretch, curve approaching, clock blinking 1:02 am. I slowed down. Real slow this time, and there it was. Standing beside the crushed mailbox. Dark hood. Hands by its side. But this time, one hand was outstretched, holding something. I couldn't see what it was wrapped in, what looked like cloth or old canvas. Dirty and sagging like it had been dragged. I braked. Hard. Not sure why I did it. Maybe part of me wanted to prove something to myself. Maybe I thought if I got close, I'd see it was just a coat rack or some farmhand playing games. But when I rolled to a stop, window halfway down, my headlights washed over the figure, and God help me, it stepped forward. I couldn't see its face, just the deep shadow of the hood. But I felt the weight of its stare, like my bones were vibrating under it. It held out the wrapped object. I didn't take it. Instead, I reached for the gear shift, ready to throw it into drive. That's when it spoke. Not loud, not even clear. Just, A breath. Take it. I froze. That voice. It didn't sound human. It sounded dry, brittle, like leaves scraping pavement. Then I saw something move in the bundle. Just a twitch. A finger, maybe. Pale and damp. I floored the gas. Didn't stop till I hit the Walmart lot in Denton, tires smoking, heart in my throat. I sat there till sunrise, watching the mirrors. Nothing followed, but I knew it wasn't over. Next night, I called in sick. Night after that too. But 380 called me again, as roads always do in Texas. I started dreaming about it. Every time, I was standing by the mailbox, not driving past it. And in every dream I took the bundle. And every time I woke up with blood in my nose. I told myself to forget it, to move on. But something about that figure haunted me. The way it never moved until I acknowledged it. The way it seemed patient. And worse, purposeful. So I did the unthinkable. I went back 1:03 a.m. I parked the truck. Got out. Walked the shoulder under that chalk-white moon. The figure was already there, standing as if it had always been there. No noise. No greeting. I stepped closer. Close enough to see the bundle tremble in its hands. It offered it again. I took it. I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't, but my hands moved like they weren't mine. It was heavier than I expected. Wet. Smelled like old meat and river mud. I looked down, slowly unwrapping it. My hands shook so badly the cloth stuck to my fingers. Inside wasn't a package. It was a face. Mine. Bloated, pale, mouth open like it had screamed too long. Eyes glazed in a film of red, staring back at me with horror that mirrored my own. I dropped it. Or tried to, but it stuck to my hands. The cloth melted. Like tar, pulling into my skin, wrapping around my wrists like veins. I screamed, fell backward. The figure remained still, hood turned downward, as if watching me become what it once was. I blacked out. Woke up on the ground just before dawn. The air dry and the mailbox still crushed beside me. No sign of the figure. But my truck was gone. So was my phone. My ID, my wallet. I was standing barefoot on the shoulder of 380, holding nothing but a torn envelope in my hand. It had my name on it. Postmarked October 24th, 1992. No. Stamped. Just 3 words scrawled across the consta. Front and crooked handwriting. Return to sender. There's a stretch of FM 521 just past Brazoria where the road dips low and the trees grow too thick. Their branches gnarled like arthritic fingers reaching across the shoulder, trying to touch the asphalt. It floods easily there, every spring. And sometimes in late summer when the Gulf stirs up storms too fast for the weather folks to warn anyone. But no matter the time of year, no matter the sky blue as glass or black with thunder, there's always a woman in a soaked white gown, standing right off the shoulder, always facing away. People say she's been there for decades. They say she's not real, just some trick your eyes play when you're dead tired and driving home from the plant in Freeport or the late-night diner in Angleton. But then those same people stop talking the moment someone asks what happens if you honk, because they know, or they've heard from someone who knows. I used to drive that road nearly every night for work. I did runs for an equipment supplier, hoses, piping, things the chemical plants needed in a rush, and I always tried to get back before midnight. I told myself it was for sleep, but really, I didn't like passing her. I saw her 6 times. The first was in late March, after a heavy rain that made the edges of the highway look like a dark soup. I'd slowed down to keep the van from hydroplaning. That's when I saw her standing just past the edge of my high beams. Pale dress plastered to her back, her head bowed like she was praying or crying. Her arms hung loose, but not straight. They bent at angles that didn't look natural. I blinked, thinking maybe it was a trick of the mist, maybe even a plastic bag or a scarecrow from the nearby fields. But the gown moved slightly in the wind, and she had hair. Long, dark, wet. It clung to her back and shoulders like seaweed. Didn't honk. I drove past, slowly. I watched her in the mirror for as long as I could. She never moved. The second time was a week later, and it was dry hot even. The kind of sticky spring heat that makes your shirt cling to your chest by noon. Still, she stood there. Same spot, same pose. Same wrong-angled arms. I started asking around at gas stations and diners. I didn't tell people what I saw, just hinted. And a few locals knew. One old guy at the dairy bar said she was in a wreck. Back in the 50s or 60s, wedding night maybe. Her car hit the embankment and flipped into the flooded ditch. Took him 3 days to find her body. They say she's still trying to walk home. Another man, a trucker with a busted front tooth, said, if you honk, she turns. Don't do it? I did. Swear to God, I ain't driven that stretch in years. I went off the road the next day. Woke up with glass in my arm and blood down my legs. Couldn't remember crashing. I didn't believe it, of course. I believed something was there, but not a ghost. Not the supernatural. The third time, I brought a flashlight. I slowed down just before the curve. There she was, same place, standing motionless. I clicked on the flashlight and held it out the window, shining it toward her. The light caught the wet folds of her gown, but something was off. The fabric didn't crinkle or move like cotton. Or lace. It looked thick, waterlogged beyond reason, heavy like it had been soaked for years. I swear it shimmered with something dark at the hem, like oil or blood. She didn't react to the beam, but the radio in my van crackled. Just once. A burst of static like a gasp. Then silence. I turned the light off and drove on, heart pounding, palms slick. I promised myself I wouldn't look back. But at the next stop sign in town, I peeked into the rearview. She was gone. Not just smaller in the distance dash gone. No one stands there during the day. I tried. Pulled over once at 2 in the afternoon. Stood in the same spot. Nothing felt strange. No chill, no ghostly energy. But at night, even when you don't see her, you feel like something's watching. Fourth time, I had my buddy Darren with me. We were hauling a big generator to Sweeney, and I told him about her beforehand. He laughed. Said he'd honk when he saw her. I begged him not to. We saw her just after the curve, same as always. This time the moon was out and her dress gleamed. Like porcelain. Darren honked twice. She turned. The motion wasn't natural. It was too slow, too controlled, like a puppet being pulled by strings. Her shoulders shifted and her head turned, but her feet never moved. We couldn't see her face. Not in the dark. But I swear the shape of it, the outline was wrong. It was too long, too thin, no nose, no lips. Just smooth dot, and then our lights dimmed. The engine. Hiccup PED. The radio let out that same burst of static. Then she was gone. Darren didn't laugh after that. The next day, his truck wouldn't start. He said he saw her again that night, this time at the edge of his driveway. I told him to move. He left town 3 days later. The fifth time, I stopped the van. That's the part I don't like telling. I was angry. My girlfriend had left me. The job was drying up. I wanted something real, something to fight, something to punch or scream at. So I stopped. I rolled the window down. She was maybe 20 feet away. Still turned. Still wrong. I shouted. Called her a fake. Told her to go back to hell. Nothing. IHONKED. She turned. And I saw her face. Or rather, I saw the space where a face should be. It was a black void, like a hole had been carved into the world. No skin, no eyes. Just a sucking, endless pit that shimmered. Like heat off a road. I couldn't breathe. My chest locked up like a vice had grabbed me. When I blinked, she was gone, but her reflection stayed in the windshield for miles. I haven't driven that road since. I take a longer way now. Adds 40 minutes to every trip. Doesn't matter, because she's still there, people still see her. Still honk dot, and now and then, someone disappears. Their car's found, empty. Lights on, engine running, but no body. Just a soaked white gown on the shoulder, slowly sinking into the mud. It started with a trip I'd taken a dozen times before, always late, always alone. I was headed south on I-35, somewhere between Waco and Austin, pushing past midnight. The kind of drive where the road melts into a stream of taillights and exit. Signs you forget the second you pass them. I had the radio low, just enough to keep the silence from getting too heavy, but not loud enough to drown out my thoughts. I remember I was thinking about how tired I felt. Not physically, I'd had a gas station coffee 2 exits back, but the kind of tired that creeps into your bones when the world feels a little too quiet for a little too long. I passed mile. Marker 312, just as the first flicker hit my windshield dot. It wasn't bright, just a pulse of light. Like someone trying to catch your attention with a dying flashlight. I instinctively checked my mirrors. Nothing behind me except dark pavement and my own red taillights bouncing off the reflective strips. I slowed down slightly, not because I was scared, not yet, but because that kind of light doesn't just happen. There was no shoulder there, just a thin strip of gravel before it dipped into that steep embankment lined with scrub brush and scattered fence posts. Then it happened again. A flicker. Directly ahead, then gone. Just as quick, I rubbed my eyes and leaned forward, squinting. Through the windshield, the high beams were on. Nothing but black top and the distant glint of an overhead sign that read Exit 3174 miles. No cars in front of me. No headlights behind. Just the wide, empty ribbon of highway and the faint hum of the engine. But my gut shifted, the kind of shift that has nothing to do with digestion and everything to do with instinct. Another flash. This one closer. Direct. It hit the center of the windshield and shimmered like someone had just flicked a lighter. In the dark, I hit the brakes. Not hard, just enough to take me down to 60. My hands tightened on the wheel. That was when I saw movement. A silhouette. Not in the middle of the road, not off to the side, but right where the shoulder should have been if the ground wasn't so steep. There wasn't room to stand. Bet, I swear to God, someone was standing there, just beyond the reach of my headlights, holding something, swinging it in slow arcs like a metronome. Left, right, left. I blinked and they were gone. I drove another mile without breathing. Right, kept. Checking the mirrors, still no one behind me. Not even the distant glow of another car. That part of the highway always had traffic, even in the dead of night. Truckers, college kids, locals. But it was like the whole stretch had emptied out just for me. The engine buzzed under my seat, steady and low, but it sounded too loud. The inside of the car felt too tight. Then I passed mile marker 313, and everything changed. The temperature inside dropped. Not gradually, not like the AC had kicked in, I mean it dropped. Like a door had opened to something colder than the night air. My breath fogged, just once, against the glass. And then the flashlight hit again, this time from inside the car. It wasn't a reflection. I saw it, that faint, shaky glow sweeping across the dashboard from the passenger seat. Then across the back seat. I turned my head so fast my neck popped. No one. Of course no one. But the light kept moving. Forward, backward, forward. It flickered like the batteries were dying. I pulled over. Now I know how that sounds. Every horror story starts with someone pulling over when they shouldn't. But I had to. I was shaking. My hands weren't working right. My breath felt stuck behind my ribs. I just needed to step out, breathe something that didn't feel recycled and haunted. I didn't even kill the engine. Just slipped it into park, opened the door, and stepped into the night. It was dead silent. I mean dead. Not the usual cricket chirp, night bird hum you'd expect along a Texas highway. It was like someone had taken a vacuum to the world and sucked out all the noise. I looked around. Nothing but open land, low brush, and the long curve of the road sloping into the dark. The highway stretched out both directions, empty as a ghost town. Then I saw it. A figure, maybe 30 yards back, just past the 313 sign, standing impossibly still on the incline, like their feet weren't touching solid ground. They were holding the flashlight. I could see the shape of it now. Long, plastic, the kind you'd buy at a gas station, flickering like it wanted to die. The figure didn't move, didn't sway with the wind. They just pointed it at me. I got back in the car. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door like in the movies. I just eased in like something fragile was watching, like sudden movement might break whatever thread was holding this thing back. I slammed the lock button and put it in drive. When I looked up, the figure was gone, but the flashlight wasn't. It was lying on my hood. Right on the center, facing me. Still on. I froze. My brain couldn't figure it out. There'd been no sound, no movement, no footsteps. Just gone. And then this thing, sitting on my car like it had always been there. I couldn't even move. For a second. Couldn't even think. Finally, I cracked the door open and reached out one trembling hand. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. It didn't even feel like plastic. Just smooth and weirdly soft. Like skin stretched over something too firm. I grabbed it. The second I did, every light in my car shut off. Dashboard, headlights, cabin, dead. The flashlight went out too. I screamed. I'll admit that. I fumbled for the keys. They were still in the ignition and cranked. Nothing. Not a cough. Not a click. Just silence. I slammed the wheel. Tried again. And that's when the light came back. But not the flashlight. Dome light. The one above my head. It clicked on, slow and dim, and illuminated the inside like it was bleeding color. And there, right in the rear view, I saw a face. Not reflected. Sitting in the back seat. No movement. No breath. Just staring. Wide milk glass eyes and a mouth that didn't close all the way. Like it had been left open just enough to whisper something you couldn't hear. I turned around so fast I banged my elbow against the seat. Nothing there. Empty. But the flashlight in my hand buzzed once. Not a noise. A feeling, and the dome light blinked out. When I looked back in the mirror, the face was closer. Right behind my headrest. I dropped the flashlight. Everything came back on. The headlights. The radio, the dashboard lights. All at once, like the world had just remembered to power back up. I slammed the gas and took off, wheels spinning in the gravel before catching the pavement. I didn't look back. Not once. I drove. Until I hit a Love's truck stop nearly 20 miles down the road and parked under the brightest light I could find. The flashlight was gone. I told myself I imagined it. Sleep deprivation. A trick of the light. I didn't mention the face. Not even to myself. But that was a year ago. And I've been watching the forums. The long-haul driver boards. Reddit threads. Texas ghost maps. And every few months, someone posts the same thing. Mile marker 313. Flashlight. Alone. Always alone. They say if you're with someone, it doesn't happen. Doesn't matter who. A passenger, a dog, even a baby in the back. The light won't come. But if you're alone, and it's late, and you're just tired enough to miss something in the corner of your eye ... They wave you down ... and if you stop, they get in. You ever take FM 1960 out past Atascocita? Real late, like the kind of late where it's just you and the road and maybe a couple of gas station moths batting against your windshield? That stretch past midnight has a certain hum to it. I used to think it was the tires singing on the blacktop, or maybe some trick your ears play on you when it's too quiet and your brain's still wired from the day. But now I think it's something else, something under the road. Like the highway remembers things that it shouldn't. It started for me in the fall, late October. Humid but cooling off at night. I just finished helping a buddy move out near Huffman. Took longer than expected. We cracked a couple of beers afterward and shot the shit. So by the time I left, it was close to 1 a.m. I wasn't tired though. I remember feeling weirdly alert, like every nerve in my skin had tuned up a notch. That's probably why I noticed the kid. He was just past the bend where the trees crowd close and the road loses its shoulder. I saw him on the fog line, walking. Barefoot, his solace nearly kissing the white paint. He had on this tattered button-down and dusty pants that looked like they belonged in some 1950s yearbook photo. The light from my high beams hit his back and made his shape glow pale and strange, like he'd been cut out and glued there. And he was smiling. Even from behind, I could see it. The kind of smile that stretches a little too wide like his face. Hadn't been taught restraint. I eased up on the gas and passed him slow, thinking maybe he was hurt, or worse, high and about to dart into traffic. But he didn't flinch, didn't turn. Just kept walking that white line like it was a tightrope, only he could see about 30 yards up. I pulled over. I don't know why. That's the part that keeps bugging me, even now. Something in my gut told me to keep driving, to get home, lock the doors, and pretend I hadn't seen anything. But my hand was already shifting into park. I rolled the window down and leaned out. "Hey, you okay, kid?" He stopped walking, just like that. Froze. In place. Then, slow as molasses, he turned. His eyes didn't reflect light like most eyes do. They swallowed it. Pits of polished coal. And that smile, I'd thought it was wide before, but now I saw the truth. His mouth opened more than it should have. Too many teeth. Too white. Like baby teeth that had never stopped growing. Then he spoke. "Want to see where I live?" The voice wasn't a kid's. It was low and heavy, like it had traveled through a long pipe to get to me. Something about it made my skin crawl. It sounded wet, like someone gargling gravel. I didn't answer. Just sat there frozen with my hand gripping the steering wheel. Then, without me touching the controls, the window rolled down the rest of the way. A soft electrical hum. I swear to God. The boy grinned wider, if that was even possible, and took a step closer. His bare feet didn't make a sound on the asphalt. I could see the grime on them now. Caked dirt, scratches, a piece of glass sticking out from the side of his heel. "I live close," he said. "Real close. Come on." I started shaking. I remember trying to roll the window back up, but the button didn't respond. My whole truck, a 99 F150 that had never given me serious trouble, suddenly felt dead in the water. No dash lights, no engine hum. Just the buzz of crickets and the distant whippoorwill call. He took another step. He was beside the door now, and then he leaned down real slow and peered into the cab. Our eyes met, and I swear to God it was like being dropped into a frozen lake. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. My vision tunneled. "You should meet my family," he whispered. I finally broke. Reached over and slammed the lock down. But it didn't click. It didn't catch. He smiled like he knew it wouldn't, like he'd done it before. Then something changed. From the woods on the opposite side of the road, I heard movement, leaves rustling. A twig snapping. More footsteps. Heavy ones. Multiple. I twisted in my seat and saw shapes coming out of the trees. Pale and slow-moving, like they were underwater. Some were tall, hunched, others low and crawling. The boy looked back over his shoulder like he was checking to see if the rest of the party had arrived. And then he laughed out. It was the worst sound I've ever heard. Not loud, not shrill, just ... wrong, like 100. Laughs stacked on top of each other, playing slightly out of sync. Too fast. Too many. I didn't think. I just jammed the keys in and turned. Somehow the truck started. The lights flickered to life. The dash lit up like a Christmas tree, and the engine roared like it had missed me. I slammed the gear into drive and peeled out, tires screaming, gravel spitting from the shoulder dot in my rearview mirror. The boy was still standing there, smiling, watching me go. Behind him, the figures had stopped at the tree line, waiting, like they'd missed their chance and weren't in a hurry to chase me. Because maybe they already knew I'd be back. That'd be the end of the story if it was just one night. Just one creepy kid on a weird stretch of Texas road. But it wasn't. I saw him again 3 weeks later. Same spot, same time, same. Pale feet and cracked grin. This time I didn't stop. But he turned his head as I passed and looked directly at me. And then he mouthed something. I swear I saw the words form. Still waiting. I've since talked to a few locals. Older folks. Mostly. One guy at the gas station said he used to hear about a barefoot kid back in the 70s. Said he was hit by a drunk driver and dragged nearly 40 yards. Said they found his shoes miles away, still tied neatly side by side on a porch no one lived. Another lady told me her niece once picked up a boy walking alone on FM 1960. Said he was sweet and smiling and barefoot, even in winter. He asked her to drive him home. They never found her car. I don't take that road anymore. I moved out toward Magnolia, found back ways and detours, anything to keep me from seeing that smile again. But some nights, I dream I'm driving it anyway. The road stretches out forever. The trees grow taller, the night thicker, and I know before I even see him, he's there, grinning on the shoulder dot, and every time, without fail, I hear that voice. Want to see where I live? I always wake up before I answer, but I know one of these nights ... I won't. It starts on a stretch of road most people in South Central Texas barely remember unless they've wrecked on it or known someone who has. Route 281 curves hard just before you hit the outskirts of a dying town called Encinal and on Misty. Nights when the wind gets low and the mesquite trees stop swaying, fog will roll in from nowhere. That's when folks who drive that way talk about the bent guardrail. They'll mention it like a warning you might not take seriously. The way old farmers mention rattlesnakes behind logs or oilmen mutter about pressure before a blowout. You? Don't laugh at it. You just listen. And maybe you don't take that road next time. I wasn't raised in Encinal, but my father was. He grew up with dust in his teeth and oil on his hands. And he used to drive 281 back and forth from Laredo when he was young and stupid and full of whatever kind of bravado. Made kids drink at canyon overlooks and race down winding two-lane roads. He told me about the curve before the guardrail gave way, how people used to take it fast just to see if they could. There was a kid back in '93, name was Alan Garza, who didn't make it. Local boy, played quarterback. Drank too much after a playoff loss. That was the first wreck, the one folks still whisper about. His car went through the metal and tumbled into a dry wash 30 feet down. They said the only thing intact was his class ring, still on his finger. Everything else was torn to pieces. They never fixed the rail properly after that. Still bent, even now, like a broken tooth poking from the earth. That's where people say the man stands. Not Alan, though. That's the part no one quite understands. My first drive down that road happened last winter. I was doing a courier run for the company I work with, small-time delivery work for oilfield parts, stuff that has to get there by morning. I wasn't familiar with the area and took 281 to save a few minutes. There were no other cars. Just endless blacktop, the occasional sign half swallowed by vines, and a full moon trying to shine through patchy clouds. Sometime around 2:40 a.m., the fog rolled in, fast, like something being poured onto the pavement from a bucket you couldn't see. Then came the cold. Sudden and sharp, like stepping into an unheated walk-in freezer. I remember checking the dashboard temperature and seeing it dropped 5 degrees in 2 minutes. The road narrowed and I slowed down. Didn't want to risk it. That's when I saw the guardrail. Bent, just like my dad said. Shiny in the low beams but twisted, leaning outward toward the wash below. I saw the orange reflectors attached to the metal, barely clinging to it, as if something had knocked them loose years ago. I took my foot off the gas. Something didn't feel right. The air felt heavier. Then I saw him. He was standing just behind the guardrail, almost right where it bent out over the edge. A man, not a boy. Not some ghostly teen leftover from the 90s. This was a grown man, tall, wearing a dark coat that hung stiffly off his shoulders. He didn't wave or step forward. He didn't move at all. Just stood there, facing me. At first I thought maybe it was someone stranded. Maybe a rancher whose truck had broken down. But there wasn't another vehicle anywhere. No footprints either. The fog wasn't thick enough to hide a whole damn pickup. I tapped the brakes. That's when things started to go sideways. My foot sank down too far. There was no resistance. The pedal dropped like it was pressing into water. I pumped it. Still nothing. The truck slowed from coasting, but I couldn't stop clean. Worse, the steering went tight, then jerky. Like something else had taken over the wheel. I gripped it hard and tried to guide the truck, but it was pulling left. Pulling toward the rail. Toward him. His head tilted just slightly like he was watching me panic. I hit the emergency brake. Felt it clunk under my seat, and the truck gave a low metallic groan, then slowed to a stop. Not smoothly, not all at once, just staggered to a halt about 10 yards from where the man stood, but he was gone, just gone. There was no movement, no sound, just the fog creeping across the road and curling under my bumper like fingers. I sat there for what felt like 10 minutes. Tried the brakes again. They felt normal now. So did the wheel. My hands were sweaty on the leather, and my heart was going way too fast. I put it in drive and eased forward. Nothing out of place, no figure, no shadow, no footprints where he'd stood. I passed the guardrail, eyeing it the whole time, and kept going. Didn't stop again till I saw lights at a gas station near Three Rivers. I didn't talk about it for a few weeks. I kept wondering if I'd dozed off, if stress had gotten to me. But then I mentioned it to a guy at a mechanic's shop offhand while he was rotating my tires. An older man with grease under his nails and a crooked finger. He stopped what he's older he was doing and asked, "Did your brakes give out?" I didn't answer right away, so he nodded. That's the thing. They all say that. If you see him and look too long, the brakes go. Steering too. You feel it trying to pull you in. Always toward the drop, toward him. Who is he? I asked. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "It ain't the kid." That was Alan Shore, but this one's different. He started showing up after the third wreck. That was a family in a minivan. Summer of '97. Wife crawled out, broken arm. Said her husband swerved when he saw someone by the guardrail, but there was no one found, never has been. Other stories followed, all similar. Someone always standing by the rail, always at night. always when the fog comes in low. One trucker said he tried to stop and help the man open his door, stepped out, and suddenly his rig began rolling forward on its own, headed straight for the bend. He managed to jump in and throw it into park before it tipped. Said the man, just stood there smiling. Some say he's a warning. Others say he is the curve, the danger made flesh. A ghost born not from a death, but from the fear of dying in that spot. Maybe it's all the near misses. Maybe it's the terror people carry away, and it lingers there, forming something real. Something with eyes. My dad said he never saw the man himself. But once, in 2004, he took that road alone and his steering locked up right before the bend. He was lucky his old truck had manual everything, and he forced it to the side, almost breaking his own wrist in the process. Swore he felt something, pushing the truck like a current in water, dragging it toward the edge. He never drove 281 again after that. A few weeks ago, I drove it again. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed to. Maybe because some stories get inside your bones and whisper. The fog came again, just like before. Same sudden cold. Same damp, windless silence. And yes, he was there. Just as still. Just as patient, but this time I didn't stop. I didn't look too long. I kept my eyes forward and my hands steady. My brakes held. My wheel didn't jerk. I passed the bend and the fog peeled away behind me like it had never been, and I swear. In the rearview mirror, just for a split second, I saw another car just behind mine. Empty. No driver. Headlights flickering. Coasting slowly toward the guardrail. He was standing beside it, watching. He always finds someone. And sooner or later, someone joins him. Maybe not this time, but maybe the next. You'll see the rail before you see him. And if you do stop, don't look too long. There's a stretch of I-10 near Flatonia that makes your gut go quiet. Not the kind of silence you get when you're lost in thought or low on fuel, but the kind that feels wrong. Like something's watching you. It's a flat piece of highway. Nothing fancy, just worn pavement, dried grass, the occasional carcass of a deer curled like a forgotten coat off the shoulder. And there's this billboard about 4 miles east of the Buc-ee's exit, rusted, at the edges and always peeling. Used to advertise a church once, years ago. Now it's half covered with a sun-bleached ad for some attorney out of Houston, and beneath it, like a scab you can't help but pick, is a jagged strip of the original. Scripture that once read, "He sees you." That's where she hides. The billboard girl. Most truckers know better than to look for long. You catch her out the corner of your eye just enough to confirm she's there. Not standing, not walking, just crouched, tucked behind the steel support. Column, one hand on the beam, fingers curled like dead ivy and one pale cheek visible. But it's her eyes. That's what they talk about on the channel. Black. Not dark, not shadowed black. Like oil that won't catch the light. No whites, no reflection. And she never blinks. A buddy of mine, Keith, first told me about her over coffee at a truck stop in Schulenburg. He was the kind of guy who'd laugh when a deer ran out in front of him, but this story he told me, he couldn't even touch his coffee. He saw her just before dawn. Fog was lifting, sun barely up. And there she was, just a sliver of a face peeking from behind the billboard. He thought maybe it was a kid, lost or hiding. He slowed down, thought about stopping, but then she smiled. And her teeth weren't right. Too many of them, too flat. Like a lamprey or a shark without the courtesy of Rose. He kept driving, sod. He passed the next town and pulled into a rest area. Parked and puked into the gravel. Never went near that billboard again. Others weren't so lucky. There was this guy, Danny Marston. Ran freight east from El Paso. Solid dude, married with 2 daughters. Real sweetheart with a CB handle like Grizzly Burr. He posted one last log on his private tracker, something like, "Going to stop and check on that girl behind the sign." That was it. Time-stamped at 2:12 a.m., state troopers found his rig about a mile up the road the next morning. Engine still warm, headlights cutting through nothing. Door ajar, flashers on, wallet and keys in the Q folder. His boots were still on the floor. But no Danny, and get this, no footprints either. Not on the soft shoulder, not in the grass. Just a strange, greasy smear on the outside of the driver's door. Looked like it had been made by someone with long fingers. Or too many. No signs of struggle. No blood, just gone. Word got around fast. Reddit threads popped up, but most got deleted. Something about violating policy on fictional posts labeled as real. But none of the truckers saw it as fiction. They didn't laugh about it. Not in the usual spooky campfire way. You mention the billboard girl on Channel 19, and the chatter cuts down to static, like they all know not to tempt it. Not to bring her up once the sun dips behind the trees. I made the mistake of trying to see her myself once. Late January. Cold. Night. I was westbound, empty trailer. Just rolling through that stretch a little after 3 a.m. Road was dead. Air clear, no fog. I had my eyes peeled for that old billboard, and there it came, just ahead. A jagged silhouette in the moonlight. Metal groaning softly in the breeze like it remembered something it couldn't forget. I slowed down, heart thudding. There was movement barely noticeable. The shape of a girl, crouched, exactly where they said she'd be. Small shoulders. Long black hair like wet seaweed sticking to her cheek. Just a glimpse, and then those eyes. They locked on mine through the windshield. My headlights didn't reflect anything. No gloss, just empty black. Like pits sunk into something that had forgotten how to be human. I should have hit the gas. I should have looked away. But I couldn't. Not until my hands started tingling. Like it had fallen asleep, but deeper, colder, numb in a way I didn't understand. That's when the radio crackled. No one had been talking. I hadn't keyed in. But it hissed and snapped, and I swear to you, I heard a girl's voice. High-pitched, soft but wrong. Stretched out, slowed, like a cassette left in the sun. "You saw me. Now come see the rest." My! Wheel jerked hard left. I fought it, nearly ran into the median. Brakes screeched and the trailer fishtailed. I got control back a second later and floored it. Didn't stop until San Antonio. I don't go that route anymore. Couple months after that, someone put up a motion-triggered camera facing the billboard. It was part of a ghost hunting podcast project some out-of-towners trying to get famous. They posted one clip, only seconds long. Grainy night footage, timestamp 2:03 a.m. You see headlights sweep across the billboard, and for a split second, the camera glitches, goes static. When it comes back, there she is, standing fully in front of the billboard, facing the lens. No movement, arms at her sides. Her dress, because she's always in the same pale blue dress, rippled without wind. And her mouth is wide open, not like yelling, not even screaming, just wide, too wide. Her jaw looked like it had unhinged. You could see darkness in her throat like it went all the way down. No sound on the recording, just her mouth open for exactly 4 seconds. Then she vanishes, frame to frame. One blink and she's gone. The video was deleted 2 days later. The account disappeared. People say one of the podcast hosts checked into a motel outside Houston that same week and never checked out. Door was locked from the inside. Security footage shows him entering the room. Nothing else. No one left. When they broke the door down, he wasn't there. Shower running. Cell phone on the pillow, playing a looped audio file. "You saw me. Now come see the rest." the billboard is still there, still half covered in scripture and Houston law firm promises. And every so often, you'll hear a new guy on the CB talk about a shape just past the rusted beam. Just a girl. Just a peek of her face. You tell them to keep driving, because if she ever walks out from behind that billboard, if she ever steps fully into the open onto the pavement, onto the highway, that's when we're done. That's when Flatonia goes quiet. That's when the whole goddamn road forgets how to end out, so next time you're headed east on I-10 after midnight, and your headlights catch something that looks too small to be a person, but too still to be an animal, don't look too close. And whatever you do, don't stop. It started for me the way it always does out there, hot wind, dust, and silence stretching between the low hills outside Post, Texas. That's the part of Route 84 where everything feels a little too wide, a little too quiet. Even the sky seems to hold its breath. I'd driven that stretch dozens of times over the years between Lubbock and Snyder. But that night, something was different. The temperature had dropped suddenly, the way it does before a storm, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Just the long, dark fence line stretching into nothing, and a man standing beside it. At first, I thought he was just a rancher. Tall, still, leaning just slightly toward the wire like he was listening to something on the other side. But his clothes didn't make sense. Too dark, too stiff, not right for the weather or the dirt. I slowed the truck just a bit, squinting past the bug-smeared windshield. He didn't move. Didn't even twitch when my headlights passed over him. I felt something in my stomach tighten, the way it does when you drive up on a dead animal, or a wreck you can't avoid. I didn't say anything to Travis, my buddy riding shotgun. Just kept driving, pretending I hadn't noticed. 10 miles later, he spoke up. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." We were hauling supplies down to a small oil outfit near Sweetwater, half-empty trailer behind us, no rush. So when I turned around, figuring I'd make up a reason to double back and check on that man, Travis didn't argue. He figured I left something at the gas station back in town. He didn't see the man. Not yet, but I did. Again, standing there. In the same spot by the same section of fence. Except now. He was closer to the road, maybe 4 or 5 feet off the gravel shoulder. Same stance, same blank face, same dark clothes, no movement. Nothing natural about it. And when I looked harder, I noticed something that chilled me. He had no shadow. The moon was out by then, a pale half circle hanging low, and everything. Cast shadows, the weeds, the fence posts, even the gnarled bushes along the roadside. But not him. "What the hell?" I whispered. "What?" Travis asked, leaning forward, following my line of sight. But when I pointed him out, Travis squinted, then frowned. "There's no one there, man." He wasn't lying. His face wasn't teasing or smug. It was blank, confused, like I'd pointed out a ghost. So I did what any fool would do. I stopped, put the truck in park right there on the side of the road, and got out. The heat hit me first dry, clinging, unnatural. Then the silence. No bugs, no wind, not even the ticking of the truck engine cooling down. Just me and the wire. Fence and the man beyond it. Now only a few yards away. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me. His face, when I got close enough to make it out, was long, with deep-set eyes that seemed too wide. His skin was pale dusty, like limestone. His hands hung loose at his sides, fingers too long. That was the worst part. Those fingers. They twitched, but not like nerves. It was slow and purposeful, like he was stretching them, testing them. I stepped back, just one pace. And the moment I did, I heard the passenger door open behind me. "Holy shit," Travis said, voice low and hoarse. I see him now. The man's head turned dot. It wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, deliberate, like creaking wood. He turned his face toward us fully, and for a second, I thought he might smile. But he didn't. His mouth didn't move. Nothing did. But his eyes, they were black. Not just dark, not just shadowed black, like holes punched through reality. When they landed on me, my knees buckled a little. We got back in the truck. Neither of us said anything for miles. The air felt thick, like syrup. The farther we drove, the heavier it felt. Travis kept checking the mirror. I kept glancing out the side windows. I told myself I was being stupid. Told myself it was a trick of light, a shared hallucination, maybe. Heat stroke. But we hadn't even cracked the windows. We hadn't touched a drop. 30 miles later, just before the bend near Justisburg, Travis broke the silence. He was closer, right? I didn't answer. You saw that too. He moved. The words came out hard, like gravel. Yeah, I said. He was almost at the fence post the second time. Neither of us suggested going back. But it didn't matter. Because that's not how it works. 2 days later, on our way back north, we passed that stretch again. We didn't want to. We took a different road through Spur, added nearly an hour to the trip. But eventually, it all feeds back to 84. And when we passed that stretch, quiet, empty, hot like before, he was there again, closer still, right up against the wire. Hand resting on the barbed strand. No cuts, no blood. Just those long fingers curled gently around the rusted steel like he didn't feel it. He turned his head again when we passed, just a little faster this time. He knows, Travis said. He knows we see him now. That night, I dreamed about the fence dot. In the dream, it went on forever, curling across the desert, wrapping around hills, vanishing into fog. And he was always there, sometimes a mile away. Sometimes inches, always facing me, always waiting. And the worst part, every time I blinked, the fence got closer. I didn't sleep much after that. 3 days later, we saw him near Lubbock, not near post, not the fence. Just standing at a rest stop off the loop. Same man, same clothes. No shadow. Travis threw up. We tried to stop driving. We turned down runs. I even quit the company for a while, took up hauling for a grocery chain around Dallas. But every time I headed west, every time I passed a fence line or an open stretch of pasture, my heart clenched. And sometimes he was there, not always where he used to be. Sometimes just barely visible on a hill. Sometimes reflected in the mirror when no one was behind us. Sometimes standing in a ditch, hands at his sides. And here's the thing I haven't told anyone, not even Travis. I saw him at home last week, standing by the split rail fence out near my barn, just at the edge of the cornfield. Same clothes, same pale skin, no shadow. And that night, my wife said she saw something outside too. She asked if I'd put up a scarecrow, said it didn't move when the wind hit it, but she felt like it was watching her. I lied, told her it was. Nothing. But I know better now. He's not tied to Route 84. Not really. That's just where you first see him, and once you do, he sees you too, and every time you look for him, he gets a little closer. The fence isn't just a fence, it's a line, and once you cross it, once you notice it, he comes through. The only question is, how long until he reaches the door? Because tonight, I saw him again, standing on my porch, hand resting gently on the railing, and now, I don't think he's going to wait much longer. The first time I saw him, I thought he was just some drunk in a long coat. He was standing next to a crumbling stone wall, the remains of a roadside chapel that used to mean something to the older folks out near Eagle Pass. My uncle used to call it the bones of St. Ignacio. Said the church burned down sometime in the 60s, left nothing but stones, ashes, and the memory of a dozen funerals. I never paid it any mind. It was just another ghost of the desert of forgotten ruin, sinking into scrub in time. But that night, as the sky drained of color and the road shimmered under the last of the heat, I saw the man standing perfectly still next to that broken chapel. Not walking, not hitching, just standing and pointing. He wore a priest's collar twisted slightly like it had been sewn in backward. His black coat hung to his knees, dusty and clinging to him like a second skin. His hand was stretched out, a crooked finger tracking my car as I drove past at 50 miles an hour. That's what caught me, the movement of that hand. Slow, steady, unwavering. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. His eyes locked on my windshield, and for a second, and I mean just a second, I felt like I wasn't driving anymore. Like something else had taken the wheel. I shook it off. Told myself it was heat stroke or a trick of the dying sun. I was on my way to Del Rio for work, some power grid maintenance crap no one ever wanted to take. But I needed the hours. I told myself I'd stop at the Valero near Carrizo Springs, splash cold water on my face, get a Red Bull, move on. But the feeling didn't shake. Not even after the sun went down and the darkness cooled everything to a hush. That night in the hotel, I dreamed of a voice. Gravelly, wet, like someone whispering through a mouthful of stones. It said things I didn't understand, names I hadn't heard in years. It said my mother's maiden name, my full name, my first sin. Things I hadn't thought about in decades. Things I had never told a soul. I didn't go back that way the next morning. Took the longer route through Catarina instead. Figured it was dumb, but I just didn't want to see him again. I told myself maybe it was some trick of shadow and memory. Maybe someone was out there playing some backwoods prank. But a week later, I had to head back to Eagle Pass. This time, I left early. Still light out? Still hot enough to fry skin off your arms if they stayed out the window too long. I passed the ruins again, and there he was. The priest, same coat, same twisted collar, same dead eyes. This time, he didn't just point. He stepped forward. One step off the edge of the weeds and gravel, like he was about to walk into the lane. I swerved, not much. Just enough that my tires hit the shoulder, but enough to feel it. Enough to hear the crunch of dead weeds under rubber. I looked in the rearview mirror. He was standing exactly where he had been, but his arm was down now, and he was smiling. I pulled over 3 miles later, hands shaking. Didn't even realize I had started crying until I wiped my face and my fingers came back wet. I didn't drive the rest of that day. I sat under a picnic awning near a dry creek bed and watched the sunset, not caring if the snakes came out or the wind carried voices. I just didn't want to be in motion anymore. That night, I didn't dream. I heard, like a radio buried in dirt had been turned on at the foot of my bed. And the voice came again. This time clearer. You never told her what happened in that garage. I sat up so fast I knocked the lamp off the nightstand. I hadn't told anyone. Not even God. Not when I was 12 and not when I was 20. And certainly not after I buried the dog in the backyard and told my sister she had just run off. No one knew that. Not even my wife. And that voice, slow, hoarse, broken by static and hate, said it with the same rhythm my dad used to speak when he was drinking. The same mocking tone, the same drawn-out vowels. It wasn't just speaking. It knew. I didn't go near that chapel ruin again. I took jobs farther north, changed routes. Told my boss I had truck problems every time something came up near Eagle. Pass for months, it worked. I could almost pretend none of it had happened. Almost. But the dreams came back in Spring Dot, and one night, when I pulled up to my house outside of Uvalde, my porch light flickered 3 times. Off on, off on, off again. I thought it was a wiring issue until I saw something in the reflection of the storm door, something tall and black, standing at the tree line across the road, just far enough to be outside the reach of the porch. Light, just close enough that I could see it lift its arm and point. I didn't go inside that night. I drove until sunrise, east, just east, no destination, no map, just away. But the farther I drove, the more I started seeing him, not always clearly. Sometimes it was a glimpse in a diner mirror, a man standing behind the gas pumps at a Love's, staring through the bug-splattered glass. Once I swear he was standing in a rest-stop bathroom stall, shoes pointed the wrong direction, coat soaking wet in a perfectly dry room. Always watching, always pointing, always knowing. I started calling old drivers, folks who'd been through that stretch of 277 between Carrizo and Eagle Pass, and the stories came in trickles, then waves. One guy said his brother used to see the priest in the 90s, ended up in a mental ward after driving his rig into a culvert near Quemado. Another said the priest used to walk the shoulder barefoot in the 70s until some farmer shot him dead. Said he just got back up, dusted off his coat, pointed. But the worst story came from a woman named Letitia. She worked a border patrol job in her 20s, said she'd stopped near the chapel ruins one evening to take a call. Saw the priest standing in the middle of the road, hands at his sides. She rolled down the window to tell him to get the hell off the pavement, and he said her name before she opened her mouth. Then he started whispering things. In Spanish. In English, words she wouldn't repeat to me, even on the phone. She said she blacked out. Came to 10 miles south. Her cruiser had blood on the dash and the passenger door had claw marks down the inside. She quit the force the next day. I asked her if she knew what he was. She didn't pause. He's a confession you never made, she said. But he makes it for you. I stopped sleeping in my own house after that. Couldn't stand the windows. Couldn't stand the dark. Couldn't stand the silence. Every time the TV went to static, every time the power blinked, every time a song on the radio said something too close to home, I imagined that voice creeping through it, like mold in the walls. I think he's following me now, not just watching. Following. Because a week ago, I stopped outside Odessa to rest my eyes, parked under a burnt-out billboard and let the engine idle. And when I opened them again, the driver's side window was fogged up, and a fingerprint was on the glass. Just one, pointing at me. I didn't wait. I put the car in drive and never looked back. But the next morning, in the parking lot of a Motel 6 just outside Abilene, I found something stuffed under my windshield. Wiper, a black strip of cloth, a priest's collar, twisted, stained. He's getting closer. I haven't even told you the worst part. The voice I hear in my dreams now, it's not whispering anymore. It's chanting. They say the turn before Cold Spring's Old Town limits right, where the pine woods thicken and the road curves sharp over the sloped edge of a dry creek, is cursed. Locals mutter about a time years back, maybe 83 or 84, when an ambulance skidded in the rain trying to take a burn victim to a hospital that never got finished. The whole project was abandoned halfway through construction, and now all that's left is a shell of concrete and rebar tucked somewhere deeper in the trees. That's just the kind of story you tell drunk at a bonfire or on a midnight ride too. Scare the freshmen. But the ones who drive alone at night, especially truckers or late shift folks heading up from Livingston or looping around Lake Livingston State Park, they don't laugh. Especially not if they've seen her. I was headed to my cousin's place that night, a Thursday. I'd stayed late to fix up a busted hot water heater down in Goodrich, didn't finish until past 11, and decided to take the scenic way back even though it was slower. Route 150 twists real narrow as you approach Cold Spring, especially near that curve. No shoulder worth a damn, just loose gravel and pine needles that haven't been swept in decades. I remember thinking how still everything was, no wind, no bugs chirping, nothing but the hum of my tires. I wasn't even playing. The radio. I had this weird sensation of being watched. Like something just outside the tree line was pacing me. Then I saw her dot. At first it looked like a traffic stop or maybe an accident. There was someone standing on the right side of the road just before the bend. I slowed up, thinking maybe it was a deer or a lost jogger, but no, she was dressed in white. A nurse's outfit, but torn, stained with what I first hoped was rust. One shoe missing. Blood all down her leg like she'd been dragging herself. And her hand was up waving. Not frantic, just insistently. Like she expected me to pull over. She held a clipboard in the other hand, pressed tight to her chest like it mattered more than anything else. Her cap was crooked, dark hair matted. To her cheeks, her skin the kind of pale that doesn't belong outside a freezer. I should have kept going. My gut told me to. But something God knows why made me tap the brake. Just enough to roll past slow. My window was cracked and I swear she looked at me. Not just at me, into me. Like she knew who I was. I didn't stop, not completely. But I slowed enough to see her mouth move. I didn't hear a word. Just lips moving slow, like she was repeating something. Then the backseat door lock clicked. I froze. I hadn't touched anything. My truck was old, no automatic lock sensors, no fancy stuff. The kind of latch you have to pull up with your fingernail. But I heard the click, and my stomach dropped. That door hadn't been unlocked when I got in. I keep it locked out of habit always. Have dot, and then the radio came to life. I hadn't turned it on. There was static. First just a low, white hiss, and then the noise sharpened. A woman's voice speaking in rapid fire. No music. Just codes. Code blue. Trauma Bay. Ada 5 minutes. Clear OR. VFib. Repeat VFib. It went on and on, almost screaming, like someone shouting through a hospital intercom from miles away. I turned it off. The screen stayed on dot. I yanked the knob. Punched the button. Hell, I even tried pulling the battery fuse later. Didn't matter. It wouldn't stop. The voice just kept calling out codes and room numbers and strange phrases like crash cart compromised and subject lost. And while I was struggling with it, I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was in the back seat. No sound, no slamming door. Just there. Her hair dripped blood onto my seats. Her face was slack, almost expressionless except for the twitch in her jaw, like she was chewing something she couldn't quite swallow. The clipboard was still clutched in her arms, but I could see now that it wasn't a real clipboard. It looked like old plastic, maybe scorched or melted at one end. Names written on a list that had bled through with water damage, names I couldn't read except for one, mine. I swerved. Slammed the brake. The truck skidded half into the brush and I opened the door and jumped out, didn't even care if I left. The keys and the ignition. I just needed to be out of that truck. I stumbled onto the roadside gravel, skinning my knee, panting, looking around like a lunatic. There was no sound now. No voice on the radio. No nurse. Just the tick-tick of my engine cooling and the dark curve ahead. When I finally got the courage to look into the cab again, the back seat was empty. Nothing but a smear of dark red across the cloth where she'd been sitting. And her clipboard gone. The radio? Dead. Wouldn't turn on again until the next day. I towed the truck to a buddy's shop and had them check every wire. They found nothing. Said maybe the battery had surged or a wire shorted, but couldn't explain the voice, or the lock, or the blood. I didn't drive that stretch again for weeks. Not until I was forced to, coming home from a funeral in Cleveland. It was dusk. Rain just starting. Road slick. And just before that curved same spot I saw her again. This time she didn't wave. She just stood there. Clipboard gone. Both hands limp at her side. Her head tilted like her neck had broken. Blood streaked down her face, but her eyes dead, clouded, and watching. I didn't stop, didn't slow. But the second I passed her, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. A notification I never want to see again. A voice memo unsent, unrecorded, titled, "Intake 11:47 p.m. I opened it. All it was breathing. Labored, wet, and then, barely audible, her whisper, "You're already admitted." I tossed that phone into the lake the next day. A guy I knew who worked ambulance runs out of. Polk County told me something over beers once. Said there was a nurse stationed at a temporary clinic being built up that way. The state ran out of money. The contractor left it half finished, but the nurse, she kept coming in. Kept clocking hours. Lived in a trailer by the frame. Until one night someone found her car wrapped around a pine tree near that curve. She'd been thrown clear. Bled out on the shoulder. They said she was still holding her clipboard when they found her, even though she'd lost most of her face. They buried her in a closed casket and wrote it off. He said her name was still in the system. Her badge number sometimes pops up in ghost entries when they run inventory. Sometimes, at 11:47 p.m., an intake form shows up on the server. With no patient name, no nurse assigned, just a room marked post-triage. That curve before Cold Spring isn't just a bend in the road, it's a checkpoint. And if you stop when she waves you down, you're not just helping someone in need. You're volunteering yourself for a ride that never ends. And the next time you check your rear view and feel cold breath on your neck, don't bother slamming the brakes. You're already on the list.